And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio's daily Facebook Live update. And today we have an excellent show lined up for you today. First of all, I'd like to wish all our Indonesian brothers, this is a very wonderful and a happy Independence Day for yesterday. So 14th we had the Pakistan's Independence Day, and of course 15th India's Independence Day, and we had that big huge live show coverage from here, and thanks to everyone. We're very close to 40,000 views. Come on, let's make it to 40 plus with your help. And yesterday was Indonesians Independence Day. We'll look at that as we go along. But right now, let's take a very quick look at weather, and with that, we'd like to welcome Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of Tuesday is maximum 25 degrees today. Chances of rain are 0%. Brisbane area is mostly sunny. Light winds becoming northerly 15 to 25 kilometers per hour in the evening. Fire danger is high. Sun protection is recommended from now till 2:40 p.m. UV index predicted to reach 6, that is high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dilraj. And as you mentioned, yes, we need to stay safe, and that fire danger, and of course the sun protection is so much recommended. Well, right now, when we talked about the Independence Days that we had first, Pakistan's Independence Day, then we had India's Independence Day, and now we have the Indonesian Independence Day celebration. And thanks, David, for the invite. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there yesterday, but Usa was there, and the Story Bridge and Victoria Bridge and City Hall all lighted up in the Indonesian colors, Indos colors. Very good. I've got such fond memories of Bandung when I represented Australia there at the Multi-Faith Casino. So let's take a very quick look at Indonesia's Independence Day and its history.
Today's Google Doodle commemorates the Indonesian Independence Day of 2020, also known as Hari Kemerdekaan. Across the country, on this day in the year 1945, the Indonesian leader Sukarno declared the country's independence. On August 17, the red and white national flag of Indonesia was unfurled for the first time. Indonesia has over 300 different ethnic and linguistic groups. Hari Kemerdekaan is commemorated across Indonesia with tremendous enthusiasm.
And happy Independence President's Day. David, Fenty, and Esti, and all our Indonesian friends and our community right here in Brisbane. It's wonderful, and it is good to see that yesterday, after a long time, you could all get together, at least together rather than always virtually. And of course, we had that big conference yesterday when you joined in once again there, David. So it is wonderful and so good to see all the things that you are doing out there. Well, right now, as we mentioned before, that there's so much protest and everything going on. This is something that has just come off the hot of the press, as they reckon, and just happened now. So let's take a quick look at the refugee protests happening right here. And as you know, many commuters got trapped this morning because of the protest, and as the protests were happening, the traffic got disrupted and people could not get to places in time. But that's as of this morning. These scenes are brought to you courtesy of Channel 7 and from the helicopter. And that's the Victoria Bridge, and as you can see that the traffic's been backed up for miles, and there have been lots of disruptions that's been happening there, and there's been so much talks and so much commentary going on about the refugees, and people asking that the refugees be let out as well. But of course, there's a due process that needs to take place, and for the rules to be upheld until and such time as the rules are changed of the land. And that's why the authorities have problems dealing with that, because they always need to deal with the law of the land at the time. Well, another news which we covered a while back was the inauguration and the opening of the second runway at Brisbane Airport. Now, as we know from last year, there have been big plans for a big festival, for a big fair, a community affair where people would have all got together. There would have been stalls, festivals, and all the planes would have lined up as normally you have, tents as the stalls. All the planes would have lined up, and there was a big, massive plan. But of course, then came COVID-19, and that plan went out the window. And all that was done with the view that the aviation sector would continue to grow, that there would be more need for bigger runways, bigger airports, more infrastructure put in place so that travelers could come in and go with ease. But once again, you can plan all those things, but when something like this happens, what do you do? And so there's a big challenge there. And with that, with having all that in mind, something else that was planned was the Gold Coast Airport. So Mark Bailey is there. So let's take a quick look at the live update from Gold Coast and see what the latest is on Gold Coast Airport.
Look, it's been a tough time for Gold Coast Airport. The airport's actually got no flights today. We have 11 flights a week at the moment, and that's compared to the 350 flights a week that we had pre-COVID. So it's really time we had some positive news, and we really welcome this announcement by Minister Bailey and his colleagues. There's no doubt that while we've got our challenges currently, we really need to invest in infrastructure for the future, and that's what this is. At the moment, development across the airport is happening. The Ridges Hotel is close to completion. The terminal expansion is moving along very smoothly. And this announcement about the new entryway into the airport, the signalised intersection, recognises that the Gold Coast Airport precinct is going to continue to grow into the future. There were around 15,000 vehicles a day accessing the existing entry point. We realised that was not going to be sustainable with future growth. And so this is a plan that we've been talking with the state government about, and we're really pleased that they've come forward and working with New South Wales Government are looking to fund this project to create the new entrance into the Gold Coast Airport. That's going to be important for the growth of the airport into the future, but also for our partners in the precinct, the Ridges Hotel, the Southern Cross University, so the many thousands of people who will in the future be coming in and out of this precinct are going to benefit from this important entryway. And in terms of unlocking future development, it's a really crucial piece of infrastructure. So we're really pleased to be able to have some positive news there, really pleased that the state government has come forward and is supporting us in growing our airport precinct.
So state government there, supporting the infrastructure once again, investors' plans, but the airport CEO Chris Mills has mentioned that there's so many other things that are dependent on that, and as we had seen that there were some aircrafts which only operated out of Gold Coast as they did not have the license to land in Brisbane. Like Air Asia and other ones, there were some budget airlines coming out there as well. Tiger, when it first started, and all of those could only operate out of Gold Coast. But the region is growing, the university is coming on there as well. So, all has to be benefited. Despite the pandemic that we are going through now, people always need to look at the forward and forward planning and not just sit down and say, well, now, we're going to solve this program. You have to look at the future and look at the future in a positive manner so that, we can all move ahead. Well, right now, moving ahead, sometimes you have to put things off as well, like the elections that were going to happen in New Zealand. And someone who probably wasn't too keen or wasn't, probably wasn't in her favour to put that off, but even then she has extended the date in the interest of the nation and looking at the interest of the people first. But let's see what, of course, we know always that whenever there's a journalist, they always take on a little bit of their own sided point in view. And many times, even though they might agree with the police, it is their duty sometimes to challenge them. So here we are. Let's hear from Jacinda Ardern.
Let's talk about delaying the election. It seems to me I might be talking to the person who least wanted to delay it. You would have been very happy with September 19th, wouldn't you?
I think there were many things to factor in, but I have to say my personal view was something that I did try and put aside. It's the decision of whoever is Prime Minister of the day to determine when an election is. And that's the standard protocol. We set that months ago. But the idea of shifting an election is not a standard decision. It is an enormous decision to make, one where I was very conscious I needed to pull any partisan politics away from and try and make a decision that was based around voters, them having a safe and accessible and fair election, feeling like they can access the information they need. And to me, that just all pointed to the 17th of October. So I knew when I made that decision, it immediately felt like the right one to me, and I haven't questioned it. Yeah,
and when you see people, Audrey Young and the Herald, Matthew Hooton, who doesn't normally go on the record saying praising you, saying you got the decision right. But I want to come back to the fact that you speaking personally amongst friends, would you have preferred September 19th?
Oh, just between you and I. Just us.
Just
in this intimate environment.
If everyone else could just turn away for the next few seconds.
I didn't actually allow myself to have a personal view on this one. I mean, ultimately what you're asking me is would I prefer to have gotten the election out of the way? There's a lot of people that would have preferred that. And one of the things I did get through quite strongly is that for the business community, they want certainty. And because I did call the Council of Trade Unions, I called Business New Zealand, I really tried to take everyone's perspective. And so that perspective did exist, but it didn't sit well with me. So I can tell you, John, that actually 17 October is where I landed too.
Okay, what's the election going to be about, do you think? I guess the obvious answer is COVID-19 and our response to it. But how broad will that discussion be in terms of policy?
It will still be, I think, John, and I've said this before, it will also be about the nature of our response. You know, there is no one playbook for what you do about a 1 in 100 year health or economic crisis. There are choices to be made. Both, in all cases, parties are going to have to borrow in order to provide for some of the immediate needs of business, wage subsidy and so on. But there's a question then to be asked around, well, what do you do around the timeframes of paying that down? What choices you make, are you going to keep investing in basic services, or will you choose to make cuts to pay that down? And also, as you rebuild, what will your priorities be? Will it be roads, or will it be transitioning the economy to a new carbon neutral future? Those are still choices. They're all about COVID recovery, but they're still very different choices. Now, I know that my perspective is we need to rebuild better, that we need to make sure that because we saved for a rainy day, we genuinely look after our people in this, and that we don't cut our services as we look to rebuild as well. So there are different perspectives, even in a COVID response.
I think she answered that quite well, and she handled that quite well. When the question was just between you and me, Utsi, you would have preferred that earlier date, and I think she handled that quite well. I mean, hats off to the women power of the world today, all taking leadership roles. Well, another country which is facing a leadership crisis is Belarus. And of course, we have seen, I wanted to show you the president and his speech there first, but the opposition there, once again, a lady says she is ready to lead the country. Let's hear from her.
Мы все хотим выйти из этого бесконечного круга.
We all want to leave this loop that we found ourselves in 26 years ago. I'm prepared to take responsibility and act as the nation's leader during this period, so the country settles down and gets back to normality, so that we can release all political prisoners and prepare a legal framework and conditions to hold another round of presidential elections in the shortest time possible. Genuine, fair and transparent elections that will be accepted without question by the international community.
So there you are. She's ready, and she says she needs to take on this challenge of what's happening in Belarus and taking on. So let's see what is happening there.
Если кто-то не хочет работать и хочет уйти, никто никого не будет гнобить, никто не будет никого давить. Пожалуйста, с завтрашнего дня или сегодняшнего ворота открыты. Извините за мою непопулярную эту фразу. Но время такое, когда надо говорить честно. Спасибо, я сказал все, можете кричать, уходи.
Верните наши голоса!
And as we have seen there, that he actually walks off and he steps down when the crowd starts shouting, step down, he actually walks away from the dais. He doesn't carry on with the speech, and that's when the leadership has been challenged. And so, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a very quick short commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466, और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globenetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 Sandgate Road, Bundal, Queensland. GlobeNet Reality. Real estate is our world.
And it definitely is the world. Right now, we look at some of the cases. So, the confirmed cases of coronavirus in Queensland is 1,091, and the recovery rate is 1,079, with 6 deaths recorded. In Australia, unfortunately, 23,599 confirmed cases, and the recovery stays at 14,533 with 421 deaths. That's 25 more than what we reported last time. And worldwide, we were talking about 16, 17, 18. Now it's at the figure is at 21.7 million. So 21.7 million cases confirmed worldwide, and that's confirmed and recorded. Of course, we all know that there are many which have gone undetected. And the recovery rate is 13.7 million, and the deaths 776K. So, in breaking news of all that was the news that came out of Victoria. They recorded 222 new cases, the third consecutive day of numbers, which is below 300. The state has recorded 17 further deaths from COVID-19, unfortunately, and today's new case numbers are the lowest in the month since Victoria recorded 217 new cases on July the 18th. So, these are some of the news that's been coming in. And on the brighter side, you remember the Bulimba ferry? Yes, the popular Bulimba Tenerife Cross River ferry has resumed after maritime experts have given the all clear to the steel-hulled Calparine ferry to go back into service. So there's a good news coming out, and thanks to Councillor Vicky Howard for forwarding that in. That ferry services are here to stay, and Brisbane City Council is working around the clock to ensure that we can keep Brisbane moving with the ferry services back on the river as soon as possible, as we know that the hop and hop off and all of those little terminals had been closed. So, looking at the news in brief, Victoria has recorded the deadliest day of pandemic which was on Monday, with 25 deaths recorded. The state saw 282 new diagnoses on Monday, continuing a slow decline in its daily inflation rate. So, what numbers do we look at? What numbers do we follow? The families of residents in Melbourne aged care facilities with more than 200 infections have commenced legal action, and that was due to happen. But right now, let's hear from Premier Daniel Andrews.
If you come forward and get tested and then wait for your test results at home, then given we have so little flu in Victoria today, because of physical distancing and all the other measures that we're taking, if you've got symptoms, even very mild symptoms, there's every chance that you've got this.
So the good part there is that, while all these precautions are being taken, so there's not going to be that many number of influenza cases. Well, that is quite true. But on that same note, talking about influenza and talking about the infections, let's see what New South Wales has to say.
Some of the information that we've received recently is that people are tending to think that their illness is influenza. They're saying, oh, it's okay, I've got flu-like symptoms, I must have influenza, I don't need a COVID test. At the moment, we have very low rates of influenza circulating. So if you have symptoms, respiratory symptoms of cough, fever, sore throat, runny nose, headache, aches and pains, it is most likely that you have COVID, not flu. And so it is essential that people don't just think, oh, it's influenza or it's another respiratory virus, and come forward to testing.
And that is very important. Well, right now, let's look at the case of the second wave. And it's been for months now that Australia has been the envy of the world. What's happening right now?
I think we were the poster country along with New Zealand. We were doing brilliantly well. The Australian public were highly cooperative. They were doing very well.
For months, Australia was the envy of the world in suppressing COVID-19.
Until the latest resurgence in Victoria, Australia's success was really phenomenal.
Now, one state is threatening the health of the entire nation.
How would you characterise Victoria's public health response to this pandemic?
Well, it's been inadequate, clearly.
When we heard that one of the security guards had tested positive, the reaction from both of us was, well, I'm not surprised.
In Victoria, coronavirus infections exploded in a second wave far worse than the first.
Every day we're getting notifications saying my father's died, my mother's died, my grandmother's died, and this is going to go on and on.
I never thought I'd not be able to say goodbye, or at least hold her hand through it. Doing it through a video call is not something that I ever imagined.
Tonight on Four Corners, we examine what went wrong in Victoria and how coronavirus infections spiralled out of control.
And we investigate the failings of authorities that are supposed to keep the community safe, but instead have put the entire nation at risk.
So there you are, the second wave, and looking at how things are progressing and where we are at when once we were the envy of the world. Well, what's happening in business? What's our spending pattern? And what is our way these days? Of course, we know that a lot of online shopping has begun. With online shoppings, people have now got used to the idea of that I can order now, wait, and it will be delivered. And you look at the delivery, and sometimes things don't turn out to as they looked on the website. And there's all these things that are happening. So let's take a quick look at what our traditions are now with online shopping.
The virus crisis has created some surprising winners and losers. Working from home has sparked an online shopping boom. Many consumers dumping their credit cards in favour of buy now, pay later services like Afterpay. The new market darling has seen its share price skyrocket, but the sector is under review and the threat of new regulations could put the brakes on its staggering growth and share price. Nassim Kadem reports.
Retail worker Annabelle Munro loves to shop. She's one of 10 million customers globally signed up to modern-day lay-by service Afterpay. And like Miss Munro, most are millennials with no credit history.
I tend to use Afterpay more for sneakers and my skincare, things that are lower risk items that I can pay smaller increments.
She enjoys the convenience of paying off purchases in fortnightly instalments. It works for her as long as she pays on time. But she's fallen behind twice, each time hit with $10 late fees. After one missed payment, Afterpay paused her account.
So there you go, the new trend coming out of buy now and pay later platforms, which are now booming on online shopping with the very high late fees. And so they get you in and, you are saying, all right, yeah, I need it, but I don't have it. Okay, I'll pay it off next month. You miss that payment and you are hit with a big penalty. And the thing is, even though you were paying later, you are asked to give your credit card details now. So they have your credit card details and they have the authority to charge that. And if you want to go into that legal battle of saying, I didn't authorize that payment and whatever, good luck to you, because it will take a lot of time for that to happen. Well, under this current and uncertain times and everything, what's happening with all the banks? Well, let's look at Bendigo Bank. As we know, it's a community bank. So Bendigo Bank's net profit is slashed in the wake of the economic uncertainty. So the gulf between the big four banks and the next tier down was illustrated starkly as Bendigo and Adelaide Bank reported a significantly lower profit in the wake of COVID-induced economic downturn. Let's look at that report.
Today's Bendigo and Adelaide Bank results highlight the gulf between banking giants and the next tier down. Bendigo's net profit's been slashed in half. The regional bank has a large exposure to Victoria and smaller businesses hit hardest by the coronavirus shutdowns. It doesn't know when or if it will pay a dividend. In contrast, Commonwealth Bank last week saw earnings down just 11% and it paid out the maximum allowed in dividend. Both banks are setting aside large amounts of money for bad loans. Bendigo Bank says $128 million of doubtful debt is going to cover COVID-19. While CBA retains a positive outlook on Australia's economic recovery, Bendigo Bank says market conditions are challenging and it's unable to provide meaningful guidance for the year ahead. For more, I spoke with CEO Marnie Baker. Marnie Baker, you've deferred the decision on whether to pay a dividend or not. Realistically, that dividend isn't coming, is it?
If it wasn't coming, we would have cancelled the dividend. I think, what we were saying and the deliberations of the board was at this point in time, it's very hard, given the uncertainty, to make that decision as to whether a dividend is paid. So they've taken a prudent approach to defer the dividend decision and are waiting to see if we can see through this current uncertainty in the time to come.
When do you expect uncertainty to end?
I think that's what uncertainty is about, isn't it? We actually don't understand.
And that's what uncertainty is about, because if you're certain about when it's going to end, so that response there from the MD, as we know, times are tough and people need to plan and be prepared, in moving forward. Now, the next story that we have is something which I have been asking, or I've been saying this to a lot of people, talking around in circles, is when is the topic of climate change. Of course, climate change is the big ticket item at any annual convention or conference these days. Now, how much of that is in our control? What have we done? Or is it just part of evolution? That Mother Earth is not the same. From the burning ages, from the forestation, from deforestation to the volcanoes, to the dinosaurs, on the earth to what it is today. Of course, mankind had a lot to contribute to what it is today, but there are many things that are beyond our control. And in one case is the looking at nature. Whenever we meddle with nature, there will be consequences. There will be consequences of meddling with nature whenever we do. As the rule goes, that to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And there has been no medicine or big item cures that don't come with any kind of side effect. So it will cure something, but there will be side effect. As we know, all of a sudden when there was mining and everyone was very keen, that is very good, it's the way forward, we'll have the mines, so we can have steel, we can have coal, we can have the tar-sealed roads, and right now coal mines are a big bad word. And now is a big no, or any kind of mining, but at that point in time, it all looked good. The big buzz now, or the talk of the town, or thing that everyone's doing is solar. They say, clean energy is solar power. But of course, there's only so much that's available. We are tapping into the energies of somewhere, of nature. We are meddling with nature. No one knows about it, but in the future, this is my prediction, this is my big profound prediction here, is that it will have effect. We will find out that it has some side effects. There are things that will happen. It will contribute to the climate change as well, being captured. As we know about the environment, when people talk about the environment, that so much, when they talk about the ozone layer, the oxygen in the air, has anyone ever counted the number of wheels that are in this world? Why am I talking about wheels? That's where a lot of air is locked in. That's all pumped into some big, huge size wheels as well, in trucking and everything. So there's millions of cars and trucks. So that's the air that's been taken out of the environment and it's locked in. It's not in circulation anymore. So when we meddle with anything, with nature, there will be consequences. So, no one knows about it because it's never happened. The solar energy and the harvesting of the solar energy is happening now. But people really need to look at and research into that area to find out that, what could be a consequence further down. Of course, we know there's abundance of energy from sun, but of course, this is a new and unknown territory where no one has ventured into or trying to look at what it might cause further down the track if we keep going at the rate that we are going right now.
When engineer Rolf Witwer retired, his dream project was designing this energy-efficient home near the town of Port Broughton in South Australia. Rooftop solar was a big part of his plan.
I think one of the underrated resources that Australia has is we've got lots of sun.
But on sunny days, the system cut out.
I was looking to see my return on investment flowing in, and I was a bit horrified to see that it was constantly shutting down and restarting, up to 13 times a day.
Despite rewiring his rooftop solar system and spending thousands on a new battery, his system can still only export a fraction of the electricity it produces.
As soon as the battery finished charging, it started to feed in, the voltage went high and the output was limited, so there's a big hole in my chart every day.
The South Australian network company says it checked the voltage when Rolf's system was first installed. But like many people who've invested in solar, Rolf insists there's an ongoing problem. Voltage is the force that moves electrical current through power lines to your home, and it should stay within an allowable range to prevent wasted energy, bigger power bills and burnt-out appliances. If households with rooftop solar export their power, that can increase the voltage nearby, pushing it over the limit of what's allowed. But the University of New South Wales has sampled voltages at 12,000 properties on the grid and found there's a different problem. It found the power supplied by the networks is close to and sometimes over the voltage limit, while rooftop solar has little impact.
This is really important because it encourages to actually have a look at all the factors that are leading to higher voltages in the grid and not just pointing the finger at rooftop solar. These accusations that solar is causing these grid problems are leading to some really dangerous policy proposals. For example, that solar households should pay for exporting their solar to the grid. But what we need is a proper evidence base in looking at all the factors, including the background voltage levels set by networks.
The Energy Security Board that commissioned the research says there are signs the poles and wires companies may not be playing by the rules. But the network's peak body says the networks often can't tell what's happening on their poles and wires.
We need more information. This is the challenge. It's knowing what is going on in the grid and where the challenges are.
But they want a cost-effective fix.
Well, the first thing the networks are not doing is spending exorbitant amounts of money. You could build a lot more grid that would help manage these problems significantly, but that would pump up everyone's power bill. So that's what networks are not doing. What we are doing is a balanced range of measures, looking at transformers in key areas and whether adjustments can be made in there, getting smarter transformers put in.
At his workshop in Toowoomba, electrician Peter Sutrin is wiring up an off-grid system for a client in remote Queensland. But most of his customers are on the grid, and many have problems with voltage.
Quite often a lot of these customers, they've been told they're on the end of the line or something like that, or they've had lights flickering or lights really bright and glowing, and they have an inkling there's some strange things going on with their power at their house.
Peter regularly deals with the Queensland poles and wires companies Ergon and Energex, letting them know that the voltage on the network is running too high.
I will say I think the network has a very difficult job, a very large job in trying to balance the voltages across Queensland. But at the same time, I'm not really sure if they are doing very much about it. They're not they're not letting anyone know too much.
While he's known about the problem for
Well, there you go. When talking about that problem, and as I mentioned before, that anything will always have some side effects. So if you are going to harness that kind of energy, it is coming from somewhere. So it means that whatever was available, infinite it might be, as we say, but that is taking away from that. So, right now they're talking about the grease, they're talking about the fluctuations, they're talking about, unsustainable delivery of, the energy and the levels and those things. But there's further study that needs to be done. I believe there's a lot more that could, be looked at. As we know, any time that we go against the rules of nature, there are things that are going to happen. There are many things, in current day in life where we many times just do things blindly without taking into account the consequences that it might have. Well, so much for, my two bobs where there's they reckon. But, I do have the certain views on certain things. But right now, let's look at, and don't let my view be that, but, everyone's got ideas and things that can be used in research, as they reckon that many times researchers and everyone go and they were sitting at some party or somewhere, they overhear someone make a comment, and that becomes their research field. Because, silly as it may sound at that time, but it's an area which no one has looked at. So right now, let's look at what's upcoming events around Brisbane. 19th of September, mark that date. And of course, that's few other things that are going to happen is, we're going to have the White Ribbon Day, which is the 20th of November. And of course, Lord Mayor's Multicultural Dinner, which will be on 6th of November as well. I'll bring to you all the details as they come to hand, and we'd be looking for community participation in those events as well. Right now we're talking about all this virtual and the Victorian Mental Health and of course the National Mental Health Week, and of course under the current circumstances there have been a number of self-harm. There have been a number of suicides that have not been reported, and many times for obvious reasons, because they always reckon when things are reported, there are always copycat incidences, and not trying to promote a kind of behavior, a kind of action. So that's why all these virtual forums are very important. It is very important that we take part in as many as we can. Be a panelist if you can by going in, filling in the forms. And of course, last night Brisbane North Committee of White Ribbon was formed, and we will bring to you all the information about who's on the committee and what's going to happen there and the upcoming events and how you can be part. One of the things that's happening there is before we had ambassadors and advocates. Now we're doing away with that because there was a bit of discrimination there, element of discrimination, I should say. It discriminated between men and women. So now, men were ambassadors and women were advocates. Now we're going to make them all as one platform, so that everyone's known with one title rather than two titles. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to say goodbye. It's been wonderful having your company. It's always so good to see you. And thank you so much for the wonderful comments that keep coming on and people for sharing. And I'd like to make a special mention of all the groups. There are like Facebook groups and other groups which allow us to share our video or our live updates, share with the members because it is information of interest to the people. And I'd like to, place on record our appreciation for that. And of course, all the individuals as well. Devika and Vashaka, thank you so much for your comments all the time. And of course, sharing the link with others there as well. And our Independence Day one is getting very close to 40,000 views, which is wonderful to see. It is a good, that we are all connecting, because, we can put on the source, we can compile this, but if there's no one out there who listens to it or plays, the good part about this Facebook Live is you can come on anytime afterwards as well, search for it and have a look. Now, as I said before, that we are doing a similar cast. It goes on Facebook Live and on YouTube at the same time. So if you prefer, you can also look at this. Now, don't forget to put on your reminder thing, so that, the bell icon, so that every time we go on live, that you are notified. As we know that tomorrow's live broadcast will be late. It will be around 2 p.m. Because of the community meeting that's taking place in the morning. So, sometimes every 2-3 months we have that late one where we will bring to you the live update, but it will be slightly late. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to say goodbye. Once again, it's been wonderful having your company. So until tomorrow, be good, stay safe.